Hello, and welcome to the first ever episode of the Superpesis Roundup podcast. I'm Ian Alba, the main host, and joining me, as hopefully forever, will be Ron Bronson, Pesis fan and American sports fan generally, and Mikko Pirhonen, who is all the way over in Finland, has played the game, coached in the game, has a great deal of depth and knowledge, and has even coached in English. So, both of you, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here.
Thank you. It's a privilege.
So, first off, obviously, a lot of people maybe have clicked on this or have decided to look at it. They don't necessarily know what this podcast is going to look at or what Pesapalo is. This podcast is really going to look at Pesapalo generally, but really focus on the Superpesis, which is the top league in Finland and in reality the professional league in the world. It kind of complements the blog that I do, which is Superpesis Roundup, and I'll give the link later on. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what the sport actually is, because a lot of people who are listening maybe don't know what it is. First of all, I come at it from a cricketing background, being here in the UK. Ron, you're over in the States. You come at it from a bit of a baseball background. What's your perception on the sport?
Perception on pesis in general, you mean, or like for baseball?
Yeah.
I mean, so I got into it a bunch of years ago, and yeah, to me, having watched it for years now and having been to games, is to me it's definitely, it's based on baseball, right? So there's a lot of stuff that as a baseball fan growing up with the game, watching it and so forth, that you can see parallels between pesis and but of course the game is very different, right? Like it's a different sport with its own energy and its own pace. But as a baseball fan, it's pretty accessible because I feel like when you really get down to it, you can see the parallels. So yeah, that's how I come at it.
And Mikko, just a quick summary. Obviously, you've got a great deal of depth in it, and we'll come on to this in a bit more detail later on. But just a very quick overview. What is Pesapalo?
Okay, I try to be quick. But okay, the Pesapalo was developed from or as a combination of a couple of bat and ball sports, out of which baseball played a significant role because the founder of Pesapalo, Taco Pihkala, spent a lot of time in USA watching baseball games. And then there was this other Finnish bat and ball game that they played before that called pitkäpallo, which is translated roughly to long ball to English. And basically, Pesapalo was found officially in 1922. So in 2 years, it's gonna turn 100 years. And I think it says something that, for example, my father's grandfather already played the game. So I'm like the fourth generation of as a player. And I started Pesapalo as a 6-year-old, and it's been in my life ever since.
Fantastic. Well, I'm actually going to come on to you now, and I do want to talk a little bit about everybody's background, just to help give the listeners and viewers an idea of who we are and how we got into the sport. Ron, how did you find this otherwise obscure Finnish sport?
So, like you said, I'm from the States. I live in Portland, Oregon right now, but a bunch of years ago, I did not live here. And I actually invented a sport called tennis polo, which people can Google in their spare time. It's not a promo for tennis polo. But in any case, at the time that we were doing that, I did that at summer camp almost 20 years ago now. And we were looking at other sports and how they are, all sports around the world, to see how they were developed and how they were made, and just to learn about the rules of different games. And during that time, this is like 2005 or so, I came across Pesäpallo the first time. And I said, they play baseball in Finland? What is this? And I thought it was really cool. But in 2005, there wasn't it was definitely nothing online in English, very little video. I just knew this existed and that was it. And I had forgotten about it. And then about 5 or 6 years later, found some videos of Pesis on Vimeo, which sort of made me decide, mostly as a joke, to start following the league. I was like, oh, this would be funny. I should do that. I should follow this. And I could talk about it at parties. This would be really funny. So I got into it. I started watching games and picked the favorite team, and then, yeah, from there, it sort of spawned into this thing that's, as if you just Google, anybody who doesn't, who I am, just Google my name and Pesäpallo, and then you figure out my journey to this. It's involved me being at embassies and being on TV and being in Finland. I really love it. I love the country, and I really enjoy the game. But I definitely come as a fan. I'm not even a baseball player. Like I coach tennis, like, for fun. So that's actually my actual number one sport. But as a fan and spectator, it's something that's my number one game now. So that's how I arrived to it.
Well, I have a very similar story, and I'll go on to it in a moment. But I'm just a fan. I'm not a player. I don't play any sports really. Just a big fan of the game. But Mikko, you obviously have a great history of the game. You started playing when you were 6. You were saying. Tell us a little bit more about your journey through Pesäpallo.
Well, long story short, my playing career went all the way through the junior, up until the age of 17 or 18, when I turned more or less permanently into the men's series, and I was with my hometown club, Joensuu, as a player when we got promoted to Superpesis, and I played 1 full year, and then because of injuries, I basically had to abandon playing, and I had to stop my playing career at the age of 23. And but I had been coaching juniors even while I was playing, and my club offered me a 1-year professional contract as a coach, and I decided that I had just finished my psychology studies, so I thought that I would give it a shot for 1 year, and then I would go back to real work. And 15 years later, here we are. So I've been a coach basically all over Finland now, and that my last job was as a coach in Tampere in Manse PP, and after that, last year I was invited to be a coach for the national team of Nepal, and I also did coaching in Bangladesh and a little bit in India. And Pesäpallo has actually got some foothold also in there, but we'll go back to that later on. But just as a quick note, and an important one, because my Pesäpallo friends are in constant contact with me, and I know that the situation over there right now is it's like in everywhere else that we live in uncertainty. So all of my friends in Asia, stay home and stay safe.
Yeah, I think that's a message that goes for everybody. It's a very difficult time. If people are listening and don't know what we're talking about, we're recording this in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic, and obviously the key thing is to keep safe. But it's had a massive impact on sport globally, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. What are your other interests, Ron? Coming back to you a moment.
So I work in tech. Other interests, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I work in tech full time, but also coach tennis for years. So I've done that for 20 years as a hobby, and so that's been probably the biggest thing. Other things you can learn about, but Pesis has definitely been a fun journey. It's been a fun part of to have this as part of my life, to learn some Finnish and to really make it something that's taken on a life of its own. And again, I didn't plan for it to happen this way. So it's and it's just beginning, really. It's been going on for a while, but the journey is really just beginning still.
Yeah, and Mikko, for those of you who don't know you, you're a big football fan, or soccer to America. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a sport that has actually played a major part in my life. I started playing football at the same time that I started to play pesäpallo too. And I played other sports, but football is something that I followed and even got to the point that I actually write about the sport. And I also write about pesäpallo. It's been something that I've done for a couple of years now. And actually, at this very moment, I was supposed to still be in UK, in Liverpool, to be precise, to cover their Premier League season, but it was abandoned and plans changed. But yeah, football and also American football, those both count as like my major interests.
Well, a little bit about me. I'm a lawyer based here in the UK. I'm a big pesäpallo fan. Obviously, started the blog, and we're doing this podcast. Got into the sport by being a bit of a baseball fan, really, and just general sports fan, and discovered this very much in a similar way to Ron, and went, huh? This is crazy. What's this? And as soon as I started watching it, I really fell in love with the game. And I just thought, there's so much here that I love about baseball, but so much more as well. And that was really what's kept me with the sport. The biggest problem I found, and I'm sure, Ron, you found the same at the beginning, there was nothing out there in English, nothing at all. And there's still not a great deal of content, but I'm hoping that as the community grows, we can start to change that a little bit and grow the game abroad.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely. I think that was the biggest barrier at first. I had a lot of Finns who helped me in the beginning, and my Finnish was even worse than it is now in the beginning. And so I had a few Finnish folks I'd met online who were really helpful in helping me to make sense of stuff and translate things and all of that. I'm pretty good now, but it was in those first couple of years, especially when there was nobody online to talk to about it other than a handful of folks. It was, there was no hashtags, there's no Superpesis Twitter account, like none of those things existed when I got into it. So it was definitely kind of a lonely road for a while, but it's great now. Things have gotten way better.
Sorry, Mikko, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I was actually gonna add to that from my perspective, when I started to make international connections with people who were interested in the game, and especially when I went abroad to coach the game and started that process, that actually taught me a lot about how should I put it, how difficult it actually is to create the terminology of this game in English. Like, we can use a lot of words that people have been accustomed to from baseball, cricket, or other bat and ball sports. But the game itself is it's hugely complicated in terms of rules and all the things related to that. And so it's been I found out that for example in Asia, I had to come up with some new things almost on a daily basis, because there were no previous cases of how this was done. But I think we're in a good start, and this podcast could be a huge help to people, for example, in Switzerland and in the Indian subcontinent, where Pesäpallo has a small but really active base of players.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a very short break and then move on to our next topic, the introduction to the game itself.